The Lord of the Rings Online is a traditional tab target MMORPG set in Middle-earth during the Third Age. It was originally released in 2007 by then Turbine and now Standing Stone Games, a small studio based in Boston that is owned by Daybreak Games and EG7. It features an expansive world including many iconic locations, characters, and stories. It has 11 classes with the addition of another one due out this year. The game has had 8 full expansions and 2 mini expansions, with another full expansion expected later this fall. Lord of the Rings Online can be played completely free to play or as a paid subscription with monthly benefits and in-game unlock. Back in 2022, Standing Stone Games made the decision to make a large portion of the game completely free. Basically all quests, areas, instances, and expansions released between the original launch of LOTRO back in 2007 and up to and including the release of Helm's Deep will be available for free to everyone. So with all that being said, is LOTRO worth playing in 2023? Let's talk about it. First off, LOTRO is a traditional MMORPG in that it is tab target as opposed to a more modern action combat seen in a lot of current MMORPGs. For those unfamiliar with the terms, tab target simply means that you select the target either by pressing the tab key by default or by clicking the target and then using your skills. The only real restrictions are range of skills, facing the target, and sometimes not being able to move. Action combat is more of a directional combat system, and being able to actually aim to hit your target is more of the name of the game. So if you're looking specifically for a game that features action combat, LOTRO is not going to be your game. Now, something that MMO players can be turned off to is that the game does feature a cash shop. But the game having a cash shop does have other implications. The first is that this means that the game is free to play at its core. In the cash shop, there are items that some players see as pay to win, such as mithril coins, which can be used to purchase legendary item upgrades, reputation limit resets, quest resets, and other advancements. Largely, the shop offers cosmetics, temporary buffs, and housing items. The game can also be played with a subscription that gives you a monthly allotment of LOTRO points that can be spent in the store for any of the previously mentioned items. The nice thing about LOTRO points is that they can actually be earned by doing the content in the game. Completing achievements in the game called deeds, you can actually earn at least 5 LOTRO points, and there are thousands of deeds. Now, the subscription I mentioned earlier does have other benefits other than just 500 LOTRO points each month. Some of the most notable are additional inventory and wardrobe slots, daily 100% XP bonuses, swift travel, all current quest packs and skirmishes, with the exception of Fate of Gundabad and Before the Shadow, the 2 most recent expansions, and access to legendary servers. It has been highly recommended that even if your plan is to play for free, to purchase 1 month of the subscription to unlock some of the VIP perks that stay permanent. Things like swift travel, trait slots, inventory bags, and the higher gold cap. Now, if you do decide to go the subscriber route, there are a few options to choose from. The base cost of a subscription also follows the traditional $14.99 a month and can be purchased by month or in 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month block. The more time you purchase at once, the cheaper it becomes. If you get a 3-month sub, it's like getting 1 month free. If you get the 6-month sub, it's like getting 2 months free. And if you get the 12-month sub, it's like getting almost 5 months free. So if you think you're going to be playing for a while, these longer subs can save you money. If you do want to play the game completely free to play, be prepared for a grind. While there's no shortage of content to get you enough points to buy the content, you may just feel like part of the game is missing. That brings me to the next point, which is the grind. LOTRO has no shortage of grind components. From the new virtue system, which is still arguably better than the previous system, the new legendary system, which is debatably better than the previous system once you figure it out, and the essence system, which has gotten better over the years. Now, at the beginning of an expansion, these systems are a little rougher, and later in the cycle, like we are at the time of making this video, it's much easier to get geared and get these pieces. There is just simply more to do and more ways to get all of the things that you need to progress your character later in an expansion cycle. That being said, this is where the cash shop comes back into play. Legendary item consumables can be purchased in the UI using mithril coins, but it is expensive. Virtue XP can be bypassed almost completely by using a Valar level boost, but it's also expensive. I guess the point here is that if you're willing to pay or not will dictate the level of grind that you will have to experience in the game. The Lord of the Rings Online has a ton of content, over 16 years of it to be exact. The world is huge, and there are literally thousands of quests and deeds to complete. The storytelling in LOTRO is very well done. Sometimes it almost seems impossible to have the amount of quest text some of these quests have. The main story of the game, referred to as the Epic quest line, has several volumes, many prologues, books, and epilogues to go along with it. These stories range from directly working with the Fellowship of the Ring to preparing the way for them, and sometimes cleaning up after them. Later portions of the main story depart from this and give players a different journey to explore in places like Mordor, the Grey Mountains, and even into the ancient dwarf kingdom of Gundabad. Along with the exceptional storytelling comes the world itself. With so many iconic places to visit and explore, it's easy to get lost in Middle-earth as it continues to grow and expand. Speaking of expanding, LOTRO is set to have yet another expansion due this year with Umbar. Now, Umbar will be in lands and biomes that we have yet to see in this game, so this could be a great time to get into the game, get caught up, and dive into the new expansion when it comes out later this year. Aside from the new location and that there will be a new Mariner class, there really isn't anything else we know just yet. What about group content? Now, LOTRO does have an extensive yet confusing and inconsistent list of group-based content. There are traditional dungeons, which LOTRO calls instances. These are kind of all over the place right now, with some having scaling and some don't. Some have multiple tiers and some do not. Some have delving modifiers and some do not. The newest dungeons have 5 tiers of difficulties. Skirmishes, which are a scalable encounter. These range in size and can be done in solo, duo, trio, 6, and 12-person versions. There are also raids, which are larger group content that is usually reserved for level caps for when the content is released. Raids are also usually tied into the story of a particular expansion. Raids in LOTRO are usually 12-person content with a couple 24-person raids thrown into the mix. Over the years, the structure of raids have changed from being one single tier to having 2 tiers plus a challenge quest on each boss on tier 2 mode, and now having 5 tiers of difficulty. This newer structure is more in line with having tier 1 be more of a story mode that a larger portion of the game's population should be able to complete, and tier 5 being reserved for the ultra dedicated raiding groups. Keep in mind, not all raids are created equally, and some raids are innately more challenging than others. So if you do like having a varying degree of difficulty in dungeons and raids, and having a fairly wide range of content to complete, then LOTRO is a good game for you to pick up. Now, there is a topic I want to talk about that is kind of in between topics, and that's the game's system. LOTRO has a lot of systems, and they are not all given the same level of support as others. The problem here is that over the years, there have been several different development teams headed by several different executive producers. The issue with that much change is that outside of the driving force of the IP itself, there has been so many differing ideas and priority. There were some years where players were told that the number of players raiding was such a small percentage that the studio was no longer going to do raid. Thankfully, that didn't hold, and raids have returned to the game with some very good ones. Another system is a type of group-based content I didn't mention earlier, and that is the Epic Battle system. Epic Battles are an auto-scaling system that lets you encounter pivotal parts of the story like the Battle of Helm's Deep and the Siege of Minas Tirith. While it was a unique way to tell the story, the system as a whole was not received well and has largely been abandoned in favor of traditional content. There was even an update to the Epic Battle system to make a version of them called Storied Tales, which is a soloable, story-focused alternative to an epic battle. Another system that has been largely left behind is the Warsteed system. It still exists, but has not been touched since the Riders of Rohan and Helm's Deep expansions. Again, this was a system that sort of felt needed at the time as a unique way to tell the story, but has largely been abandoned and left us with just very fast rubber banding horses that you really don't want to try to navigate in towns. Now, another hit and miss system is the Allegiance system. This was a new system that came with Mordor that was basically an advanced reputation system that as it progressed would unlock additional quests, gear, and travel abilities. Other than that, it really didn't add or subtract anything from the game and probably could have just been added as regular content. Most of these types of systems felt like a producer trying to make their mark and innovate where it really wasn't needed. The Lord of the Rings Online is an old game by really any standard at this point. Development began in 1998 when Sierra Entertainment started working on Middle-earth Online. In 1999, after Vivendi Universal Games took over Sierra Entertainment, the game's development was shared with Turbine Incorporated as a new titled game called The Lord of the Rings Online. The point of this little history lesson is that the engine of the game is very old. The graphics have been an area of contention for quite some time, and players have been asking for years for updates, if not a whole engine upgrade. While an engine upgrade is almost completely out of the question, Standing Stone Games has been slowly making updates to the game's visuals, and a larger update to the game's visuals has been rumored for a couple of years now. The main parent company, EG7, has put out in several investor presentations that there is a large visual overhaul coming for LOTRO. At this time, we really have no concrete details and have seen nothing from Standing Stone Games that would really suggest it is coming anytime soon. This might suggest that LOTRO's graphics are terrible, and while some assets surely show their age, there are some things like the landscapes, interiors, things like that have held up decently well over the years. Character models and NPCs are a little on the rough side, but that can be expected as those are most frequently rendered assets on screen and change a lot. There are some areas of the game that are still quite stunning to look at, assuming that your server performance doesn't come knocking. Lag is a big issue in this game. You wouldn't think a game this old would struggle the way it does, and it certainly didn't always. There are times playing the game when it feels like you're just disconnected and skills don't fire for several seconds. Checking the in-game connection meter never really suggests it's on the player end, even though from time to time players have been told there isn't any lag and it's their computers. No. It's not. As it turns out, there has been a singular engineer tasked with hunting down the sources of the lag and recently uncovered 2 large sources of lag. This was reported on Twitter by none other than Rob Ciccolini, the game's executive producer. I hope this means that the issues can largely be resolved, as I think this is one of the biggest things holding the game back in terms of player acquisition and retention. The last related part to the systems and performance of the game is the UI. The UI is very dated. It's increasingly challenging to look at with higher and higher resolution displays. Remember that part about the game being developed in the late 90s and early 2000s? Yeah, the most popular screen resolution during the game's early development was 800 by 600. And even with updates, the UI is still largely developed from that baseline. I play in 1440p and I run the UI in its native resolution. And let me tell you, some stuff is tough to read. Now there are sliders in the graphics options, which you can adjust the size of the overall UI, but it's a simple scaler and it's not a very good one at that. Anything that is above or below a value of 1 is just blurry and doesn't look very good at all. In a recent Q&A, it was discussed all of these issues are currently being worked on, but with no current timetable for completion. Now, the last topic I want to touch on here is communication. Communication is something that I really want to hit on because I think it's important. Now, this is in no way meant to be a knock on the community manager's ability or character as a person. If you take it that way, you are wrong. I think Cordovan, the community manager for both Standing Stone game titles, is tasked with too much. The Lord of the Rings Online and Dungeons & Dragons Online are 2 very large communities, whether those player bases are active or not, and they both deserve their own CMs. It really seems like he's having to work 2 full-time jobs, and that's just not fair to him or the games. Now, I know Cord is very passionate about DDO, and he should be able to put all of his energy into that. LOTRO needs a CM that is as passionate about LOTRO as Cord is for DDO. Now, over the years, there have just been too many missed opportunities to effectively communicate to the player base what is going on, what is going to happen, and why it's happening. The weekly live streams are back on LOTRO Stream, and there has been more visibility from Severlin on streams and Twitter, so that has been nice. With the newer forums, it does seem like there has been a little bit more engagement, as the new forums are a lot more performant than the old ones. I would like to see more engagement on social media rather than just posting about ads and sales and patch notes. Now, this is something I see the Ashes of Creation team do a masterclass job of, in my opinion. There's just absolutely a ton of engagement both directions. The player-developer relationship should be stronger and embraced more to provide a more well-rounded experience for everyone. Now, on the other side of that coin, there are players that couldn't care any less about any of that. They just want to log in during their free time and play the game. And there is definitely something to be said for that outlook. Now, my final thoughts on the whole situation here is that I think that given the age of the game, the fact that it is the truest interpretation of Middle-earth in a game, and that there is a large portion of the game that is simply just free to play, the game is still worth taking a look at or returning to in 2023. Just don't expect a AAA experience. Not that that really means much anymore either. There is still something about a game, even with lag, quirks, and sometimes off-the-mark development. You can absolutely play enough of the game for free to decide if it is something that you want to continue playing or not. Most people will play this game simply because it is a Lord of the Rings game, and I think that's part of the reason it is still doing as well as it is. If it had been generic Fantasy World Online, it would have closed up shop years ago. I hope this video helped you decide if LOTRO is worth playing in 2023. Let me know down in the comments what you decided. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video here on YouTube or live stream on Twitch.